Tyler Peterson considered himself a man of routine, a quality that served him well as a medical administrator in Des Moines. His life ran on schedules, patient records, and quarterly budgets. Today, however, a quiet disquiet had begun to settle in his chest, a feeling he couldn't quite place, like a low-pressure system moving in from the west. He was heading home, driving his Honda Civic along Interstate 35, a day earlier than planned. The medical conference in Kansas City had wrapped up sooner than expected, leaving him with an unplanned afternoon. His intention was simple: surprise Lindsay. She had Thursday afternoons off from her work at the realty office. He pictured her still in bed, perhaps, or curled on the couch with a book, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. He had called his assistant to clear his Friday morning, already mentally preparing for the stack of emails waiting. The thought of seeing Lindsay's face, the slight shock followed by her easy smile, had kept him focused on the road. The miles ticked by, the flat expanse of Iowa farmland blurring into a steady stream. He pulled into their subdivision around 2 in the afternoon. The familiar rows of two-story houses, each with its own patch of lawn, seemed to blur into a single image. His unease sharpened the moment he turned onto their street. Lindsay's silver Mazda was not in the driveway. Its usual spot, right behind his own car, was empty. This was unusual. On her days off, her car was always there, a solid presence. He parked his Honda, the engine cooling with a series of soft clicks, and cut the ignition. The silence in the car felt heavier than it should. He walked up the 3 steps to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped inside. The house was too quiet, too still. The air hung thick with an absence of life, not even the faint scent of coffee or the lingering spice of a cooked meal. The living room was orderly, the throw pillows neatly arranged on the sofa. The kitchen counter, usually home to a cereal bowl or a discarded newspaper, was spotless. He walked into the bedroom. The bed was made, the duvet pulled taut, the pillows fluffed. There was no impression left from a body, no crumpled sheets. It looked like a hotel room awaiting a new guest, not a home where someone had just spent the morning. A knot began to tighten in his stomach, a cold, hard stone. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over Lindsay's contact. He pressed call. It rang twice, 3 times, then clicked over to voicemail. "You've reached Lindsay, leave a message." Her voice, bright and cheerful, mocked the emptiness around him. He hung up without leaving a message. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe she had run an errand. Maybe she was out with a friend. But her car wasn't here. She never walked to the grocery store. Then, without thinking, his thumb tapped the glimpse icon on his phone screen. They had installed the app years ago, a casual agreement for peace of mind, a way to check on each other without constant texts. He watched the tiny blue dot that represented Lindsay's phone. It wasn't at their address. It wasn't at the grocery store or the gym or Kim's house. The dot was near Des Moines International Airport, miles south of their quiet suburban street. It was a good 15-minute drive from their home, maybe 20 with traffic. His breath caught. He stared at the screen, the blue dot a stark, undeniable point. He tried to think of reasons. A last-minute flight? She hadn't mentioned a trip. Picking up a friend? She would have told him. He stood in the silent living room, the phone hot in his hand, the blue dot pulsing faintly, as if confirming its truth. He paced from the kitchen to the living room, then back again, the quiet of the house amplifying the frantic thoughts in his head. After 10 minutes that felt like an hour, he decided to call again. This time he would play it differently. He would act as if nothing was amiss, as if he were still a day away. He dialed her number. It rang once, then twice, then a click. "Hello?" Lindsay's voice was sleepy, rough around the edges, like someone roused from a deep sleep. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice still thick with slumber. "Why are you calling so early? Is everything okay?" Her words, the casual endearment, felt like a chilling lie in his ears, a deception he could almost taste. He cleared his throat, forcing a calm into his own voice. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just on my way to an early seminar. Thought I'd give you a quick ring before I got tied up." He listened, straining to hear anything in the background. A faint rustling sound, like sheets shifting, then a low murmur, quickly cut off. It wasn't the sound of their bed. It wasn't the silence of their bedroom. "Oh, okay," she said, a small pause, a slight hesitation. "I guess I just fell back asleep." "No problem," he said, the words feeling tight in his throat. So what's on your agenda today? Oh, she began, the sleepiness now replaced by a careful cheerfulness. Just trying to get myself going. Kim and Sally are coming over tonight for dinner. Remember? We had it planned for like 2 weeks. The phone call ended, leaving a hollow echo in the quiet house. Tyler stood there, the receiver still pressed to his ear for a moment, listening to the dial tone. His mind began to race, replaying Lindsay's words. Sleepy voice, rustling sound, near the airport. Girls' night with Kim and Sally, planned 2 weeks ago. The pieces didn't fit. Lindsay wasn't usually so vague about her plans, and a girls' night didn't explain the airport location, nor did it explain her being asleep at 2 in the afternoon in what clearly wasn't their bed. The knot in his stomach tightened, cold and hard. He pulled up Glimpse again, zooming in on the map. The blue dot representing Lindsay's phone was static, fixed. It sat squarely over a cluster of buildings just off the main airport road. He recognized the area. There were 2 hotels there, a Marriott and a Hilton Garden Inn, both catering to business travelers and early morning flights. He noted the exact coordinates, then closed the app, the screen dimming. Without a second thought, he grabbed his keys. The Honda felt different as he pulled out of the driveway, the usual comforting hum of the engine now a tense vibration. The drive to the airport area was a blur. He found himself scrutinizing every car in the hotel parking lots as he slowly drove past. It only took him a few minutes to spot it, Lindsay's silver Mazda, distinctive even among the rows of rental cars and sedans. It was parked closer to the Marriott entrance, tucked between a black SUV and a white pickup truck. He parked his car a few rows away, out of direct sight, and watched. No movement, no sign of her. He sat there for a long moment, the quiet accusation of her car's presence filling the space. The humiliation was a slow burn, starting in his chest and spreading. He considered driving right up, walking in, demanding answers. The image of bursting through a door, catching her, formed in his mind. But then the cold, rational part of him took over. What would that achieve? A scene, a confrontation fueled by emotion. He needed more. He needed proof. Undeniable proof. He walked into the Marriott lobby trying to appear casual. At the front desk, a young woman with a polite smile asked if he needed assistance. Yes, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. My wife, Lindsay Davis, checked in earlier. I was supposed to meet her, but I forgot the room number. Could you help me out? He gave her a confident smile. She typed for a moment, her fingers quick on the keyboard. Lindsay Davis, she confirmed. Room 312. She even handed him a spare key card. Just in case, she said. He thanked her, his heart a hammer against his ribs, and walked away, the key card a cold piece of plastic in his palm. He didn't go to the room. He didn't want to know who was with her. Not yet. He drove home, the quiet disquiet now a full-blown roar. The moment he walked back into his silent house, he knew what he had to do. He needed help, professional help. He opened his laptop and typed, Private Investigator, Des Moines. He found Stan. Stan's website was brief, no nonsense. Discreet, effective, results. He called the number. Stan answered on the second ring, his voice gravelly, direct. They met an hour later at a diner on the outskirts of town. Stan was a man in his late 50s with a weathered face and sharp, unblinking eyes. He listened to Tyler's story without interruption, nodding occasionally. When Tyler finished, Stan simply said, Airport Hotel, room 312. I understand. How long do you need me? Tyler looked at him. As long as it takes. I need proof. Undeniable proof. He thought about their prenuptial agreement, a 50-50 split if things ended amicably. But if adultery was proven, it shifted to 80-20 in his favor. It was a cold thought, but it was a thought he had to have. Stan quoted his rates, Tyler wrote a check for the retainer, and they shook hands. The next few days were an agony of waiting. Stan sent brief, cryptic texts. Observations started. Ongoing. Tyler replayed their life together. Their wedding day, Lindsay's bright smile, the way she used to lean against him watching TV. He remembered their talks about kids, about buying a bigger house, about growing old together. Now all those dreams felt like a cruel joke, a performance he'd been unwittingly part of. The thought of a future with children, once a warm comfort, was now a hollow ache, tainted by the bitter taste of betrayal. He maintained a facade of normalcy when he spoke to Lindsay on the phone. his voice even, asking about her day, listening to her vague answers about work. Each word was a lie, each interaction a performance. He dreaded her return, the moment she would walk through the door, pretending nothing had happened. She arrived home late Friday afternoon, just as she always did after a girls' night. She walked in, dropping her keys on the hall table, her purse on the floor. "Hey," she said, a casual smile on her face, leaning in for a quick kiss. He led her, his lips brushing hers, tasting nothing but the emptiness between them. "How was your day?" she asked, already heading to the kitchen to grab a glass of water. "Fine," he managed. "How was girls' night? Kim and Sally behaving?" "Oh, she said, waving a hand vaguely. "Just catching up. Dinner, a few drinks, nothing too wild." She avoided specifics, kept her answers shallow, exactly as he expected. He watched her, search for any tell, any flicker of guilt in her eyes, a hesitation in her movements. But she was composed, her face serene, her movements practiced. She seemed utterly convinced of her own story. A week later, Stan called. His voice was as flat and unemotional as ever. "I have everything you asked for. Can you meet?" Tyler met him at a quiet cafe on the west side of Des Moines. Stan slid a manila envelope across the table. "Everything's in there," he said. "Photos, dates, times. The hotel receipt, too. Paid by her card." Tyler opened the envelope. Inside, a stack of glossy photographs. The first one showed Lindsay, smiling, walking hand in hand with a young man into the Marriott lobby. The man was taller than Tyler, younger, with a mop of dark hair. Another photo showed them at the hotel bar, laughing. And then the undeniable images. Them leaving room 3-12 together the following morning, her hair slightly disheveled, him carrying her small overnight bag. Stan had also included a printout from a public database. "Chad Jensen," he said, tapping the paper. 28 years old, medical student at the university hospital, works part-time in the ER. Tyler felt the air leave his lungs. It wasn't the shock of the act itself. He had known, deep down. It was the stark, tangible proof, the visual confirmation. The photos were clear, undeniable. His wife, Lindsay Davis, with another man. The hotel bill, paid for by her, confirming the stay. He looked at Chad Jensen's face, youthful and carefree, a face that had no idea of the quiet devastation he had caused. A medical student at her hospital. The proximity, the audacity, the utter disregard for their life. Tyler felt a cold, hard resolve settle within him. Devastation, yes, but also a strange sense of clarity. There was no going back. He decided to confront her on their back porch. It was a secluded spot out of sight from the neighbors, overlooking their small patch of manicured lawn. The perfect place for a private reckoning. He called Stan again. "I need you to be nearby when I do this," Tyler said, "just in case." Stan agreed, no questions asked. The next day, as Lindsay was settling into her office, a process server walked in. The man, a stranger, handed her a thick envelope. "Lindsay Davis?" he asked. "You've been served." Lindsay, caught off guard, took the envelope. Inside, she found the divorce papers. The lead paragraph stated the cause explicitly: adultery. And then the cold, legal language outlining the terms of their prenuptial agreement. The 80-20 split, triggered by this very clause. Within an hour, her car screeched into their driveway. Tyler heard the front door slam, then her hurried footsteps through the house. He was already on the back porch, sitting in one of the wicker chairs, a glass of iced tea on the small table beside him. The air was warm, a late summer breeze rustling through the leaves of the oak tree. He watched her approach through the sliding glass door, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. Her hair was slightly disheveled, her eyes wide and red-rimmed. She stormed onto the porch, the divorce papers clutched in her hand. "What is this, Tyler?" she demanded, her voice raw. "What in God's name is this?" She held up the envelope, shaking it. Tyler calmly reached for the manila envelope he had placed on the table earlier. He pulled out a stack of photos and laid them on the table, fanned out for her to see. The first few were of her and Chad entering the Marriott. Then the ones at the bar. Finally, them leaving room 312. He then slid the hotel bill, showing her credit card number, across the table. "You tell me, Lindsay," he said, his voice quiet, devoid of emotion. "What is this?" Her eyes darted from the photos to the bill, Then back to his face, her anger faltered, replaced by a flicker of panic. Tyler, no, this isn't what it looks like. Her voice was a strained whisper. It looks exactly like what it is, Lindsay, he countered, his gaze unwavering. You, with Chad Jensen, at the Marriott, in room 312, paid for by you. She tried to deny it, her face paling. It was, it was a mistake. A stupid, stupid mistake. It didn't mean anything, Tyler, I swear. You know I love you. She grabbed his arm, her fingers tight. Please, we can talk about this. We can fix this. He gently removed her hand. Meaningless mistakes don't trigger the adultery clause, Lindsay. He spoke the words slowly, deliberately. The prenup is clear. Adultery, proven, means an 80-20 split. Her eyes widened, the implications finally hitting her. No, you can't. Tyler, please, don't do this. I'm begging you. It was one time, a moment of weakness. Please, don't ruin us for this. I'll do anything. Please, let's just forget the papers. I'll change, I promise. Her voice rose, desperation creeping in, the carefully constructed facade crumbling. Her begging was frantic, her pleas echoing in the still afternoon air. Lindsay's desperate pleas hung in the air, but Tyler remained unmoved. The begging slowly gave way to a dawning comprehension, then a flash of genuine terror. Her eyes, once filled with fury, now showed raw panic. The weight of the 80-20 split settled on her, a cold, hard truth. But it wasn't just the money. And my job, she whispered, her voice barely audible. The papers. They served me at work, Tyler. Everyone saw. She stared at him, the accusation in her gaze piercing. You knew they would. Tyler met her eyes directly. Yes, Lindsay, I knew. He watched her carefully, noting the way her shoulders slumped. Did you forget about the moral turpitude clause in your employment contract? The one for nurse anesthetists requiring a higher standard of conduct? He paused, letting the words sink in. I made sure HR was informed of the situation, the details of your mistake. Her face went pale. You what? It wasn't a question, it was a choked gasp of disbelief. You told them? You ruined my career. Her voice rose, hitting a shrill note. How could you? Tyler, this is my livelihood, my whole life. Your choices, Lindsay, he corrected, his voice flat. These are the consequences of your choices, not mine. He explained further. The hospital, bound by policy, had already launched an internal investigation. Given the public nature of the serving and the documented evidence of the affair, she had been placed on administrative leave, effective immediately. Her access to hospital systems would be revoked by the end of the day. Lindsay recoiled as if struck. You bastard, she screamed, tears now streaming down her face. You did this on purpose. You're trying to destroy me. I'm securing what's rightfully mine, Tyler said calmly. 80% of everything we accumulated during the marriage, as per the prenup. That includes the house, the investments, the retirement accounts. You'll receive 20% of the total marital assets. Your car, your personal effects, and a portion of the cash. She stared at him, bewildered, as if she couldn't process the numbers. But I earn good money, I contribute. You did, Tyler confirmed, but the clause specifies adultery. It doesn't discriminate based on salary. In her desperation, Lindsay tried to make frantic calls to her bank, to financial institutions. She tried to access their joint investment accounts. But Tyler's lawyer had anticipated this. Her credit cards were frozen, all joint accounts were secured, placed under temporary hold by court order. Her name was removed from most of them. The financial world, which had once been a comfortable cushion, suddenly became a locked fortress. She then called Chad. Tyler heard snippets of her frantic conversation from the living room, Lindsay's voice rising and falling. Chad, please, you have to help me. Tyler's ruined everything. A long silence. Then Lindsay's voice sharper. What do you mean you can't? This affects you too. More silence. Are you serious? You're worried about your residency? Chad, this is my life. Chad, it turned out, was already retreating. The news of the divorce papers being served at the hospital, complete with the adultery clause, had spread. Medical residency programs were highly competitive, and even a whiff of scandal of moral turpitude could derail a promising career. He couldn't afford to be associated with her situation. His own future was too important. He told her he needed space, that he couldn't get involved. The call ended with Lindsay throwing her phone onto the sofa, a choked sob escaping her lips. The reality hit her with brutal force. Her lucrative job gone. Her financial security decimated. Her lover abandoning her. Her home no longer hers. "Where am I supposed to go?" she whispered, staring blankly at the walls of the house they had built together. The question hung unanswered in the silent room. Tyler had already arranged for her to vacate the property within 48 hours. A moving company would pack her personal belongings and deliver them to a temporary apartment he had secured for her. A small, furnished one-bedroom in a less affluent part of town, paid for 3 months, as a gesture of goodwill. The initial shock, the anger, the panic, all began to give way to a grim, cold reality. Lindsay, the successful nurse anesthetist, the woman who had lived a comfortable life, was watching her entire world unravel around her, piece by piece. The carefully constructed life she had known was now a pile of broken shards. The divorce proceedings began with a grim inevitability, unfolding like a slow-motion car crash. Ugly and protracted, each court date chipped away at whatever civility might have been left between them. Lindsay's lawyer, a sharp-suited woman with a practiced air of indignation, tried every angle. She argued coercion, emotional distress, claimed the prenup was signed under duress. She painted Lindsay as a victim, vulnerable and manipulated. But Tyler's legal team was prepared. Armed with Stan's meticulous evidence, the timestamp photographs, the detailed surveillance reports, the indisputable hotel receipt, they stood firm. Each claim of coercion was met with a photo of Lindsay smiling, arm in arm with Chad. Each plea of emotional distress was countered by the clear, confident signature on the hotel bill. The judge, a stoic woman who had seen countless such cases, reviewed the evidence. The 80-20 clause was upheld, solidifying Tyler's financial position and leaving Lindsay with the stark reality of her choices. Word of the affair and the scandalous details of the divorce didn't just spread, it detonated. Through their professional circles at the hospital, through the real estate community where Lindsay had worked, and through their shared social network. Suddenly, invitations to gatherings stopped. Calls went unreturned. Former friends, even Kim and Sally, who Lindsay had claimed to be with that fateful night, began to distance themselves. They mumbled excuses about busy schedules, about not wanting to get involved. The social ostracism was a palpable thing, a chill in the air whenever Lindsay entered a room. Her career at the hospital was definitively over. The internal investigation concluded with her termination. The moral turpitude clause, once an obscure legal phrase, had become a career-ending judgment. Finding new employment in her specialized field proved nearly impossible. The medical community in Des Moines was small, and the story, embellished or not, had already made its rounds. She was tainted, deemed unreliable. Now living on a significantly reduced income, Lindsay struggled to maintain anything resembling her former lifestyle. The temporary apartment, once a small indignity, became her permanent reality. The designer clothes, the expensive dinners, the spontaneous trips, all became luxuries she could no longer afford. She had to learn to budget, to say no, to accept a life far removed from the comfort she had always known. Tyler, though emotionally wounded, followed his lawyer's advice. Remain strong, remain detached. Each court appearance, each legal maneuver, was a calculated step forward, not a personal vendetta. He felt the pain, the betrayal, but he channeled it into a cold, methodical pursuit of justice, or what he considered justice. He saw the regret in Lindsay's eyes, heard the cracks in her voice as she spoke of her mistake. But he questioned its sincerity. It sounded like self-pity, not genuine remorse for the damage done to him, to their shared life. It seemed a lament for her lost comfort, her damaged reputation. He remembered her fickle nature, a trait he had once dismissed as charming spontaneity, her constant need for something new, a new restaurant, a new hobby, a new car. He now saw this affair as the ultimate manifestation of that trait, a restless hunger for novelty that had finally consumed everything they had built. It wasn't a mistake. It was an extension of who she was, a core part of her character that he had chosen to ignore. As the legal battle raged, the fees mounted for both sides. Even with the 80-20 split, Tyler was spending a considerable amount ensuring the outcome. For Lindsay, already struggling, the legal bills were a crushing weight, digging her deeper into a financial hole. The process was draining, financially and emotionally, but Tyler knew there was no other way. This was the cost of rebuilding. If you're finding yourself drawn into the intricacies of these decisions, stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. Chad Jensen, the young medical student, soon found that his casual affair had far-reaching consequences beyond the Marriott's walls. The news of his involvement with Lindsay, a married, older, and professionally superior colleague, rippled through the university and hospital system. Such matters, especially when they involved a direct professional relationship, even a peripheral one between a student and an anesthetist, were taken seriously. The medical school's ethics committee launched an investigation. Chad was called in, questioned by stern-faced administrators, his bright future suddenly shrouded in bureaucratic shadows. The evidence Tyler had provided, detailing the affair, served not only to secure his divorce, but also to lay bare Chad's poor judgment. He was disciplined. Clinical privileges, essential for his training, were revoked. The threat of expulsion loomed, a sword hanging over his head. His residency applications, once pristine and competitive, were now flagged, his name associated with scandal. Chad, in a clumsy attempt to salvage his reputation, sought out Tyler. He found him one afternoon leaving his office. "Mr. Peterson," Chad began, his voice nervous. I wanted to apologize. About Lindsay. I was manipulated. She pursued me. I made a mistake." He looked earnest, almost boyish, but Tyler saw through it. Tyler listened, his expression unchanging. "Manipulated?" he finally said, his voice quiet. "You're a grown man, Chad, a medical student. You knew she was married. You knew her position. You made your own choices." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Don't pretend you're a victim here. You were ambitious, and you saw an opportunity. That's your culpability." Chad's face fell. He stammered a few more words, but Tyler simply shook his head and walked away, leaving Chad standing alone on the sidewalk. His future in medicine, once so clear and promising, now clouded by doubt and scandal. His reputation, carefully built over years of study and sacrifice, was tarnished before he even had a chance to truly begin his career. The whispers would follow him from one hospital to the next, a permanent stain on his record. Unsurprisingly, Chad distanced himself completely from Lindsay. He saw her now as a liability, a threat to his already precarious situation. Their brief, passionate connection had dissolved into a bitter memory, replaced by self-preservation. Lindsay, in turn, felt the sting of this ultimate abandonment. Tyler, her husband, had left her. Her friends, Kim and Sally, had ghosted her. And now Chad, the man she had risked everything for, had vanished into the ether, unwilling to face the fallout alongside her. The quiet town of Des Moines, which had once felt like a comfortable embrace, a place where they had planned to build a family and grow old, now seemed to shrink around them both. For Lindsay, it became a cage, every familiar face a reminder of her disgrace. For Tyler, it felt like a battlefield, the quiet streets holding the echoes of their shared, now fractured, history. Tyler felt a grim satisfaction as he watched Chad's career prospects crumble, as he witnessed Lindsay's social and financial ruin. It was a victory of sorts. He had not only secured his assets, but had also ensured that those who had wronged him faced their own reckoning. Yet the satisfaction was overshadowed by a profound sense of waste and sadness. Two lives, not just one, irrevocably altered. A marriage, a future shattered beyond repair. The idea of winning felt hollow. There was no glee, no celebration, just the quiet understanding that what he had done, what he was doing, was necessary. A restoration of balance, perhaps, a grim duty to himself, to the life he had once envisioned. The cost was immense, the emotional toll heavy, but the alternative? To simply let it go, to let her walk away unscathed, to let Chad continue his ascent, was simply unacceptable. It was a cold, hard necessity. Months crawled by, marked by the changing seasons outside his window. The fiery reds and oranges of autumn gave way to the stark, cold whites of winter. Finally, after what felt like an interminable legal battle, the divorce was finalized. The papers were signed, the assets divided, the chapter officially closed. Tyler was now alone in the house they had once shared. The quiet disquiet that had first begun to settle in his chest months ago had solidified into a heavy, pervasive emptiness. He walked through the rooms, the echoes of their life together haunting him. He would catch himself mid-sentence, about to tell Lindsay something only to remember. The silence that followed was always a fresh sting. He found himself reflecting on the good times, the genuine happiness they had shared before. The way she laughed at his bad jokes, the quiet evenings spent on the couch reading, the shared excitement of planning a vacation. These memories, once comforting, now felt like ghosts, beautiful and painful. He questioned his own judgment, running through conversations, gestures, fleeting looks. Had he missed something? Were there warning signs he had chosen to ignore, too comfortable in the narrative he had built for their life? He replayed moments, searching for the crack in the foundation that he should have seen. The profound loss of the future he had envisioned weighed heavily on him. The children they would have had, the holidays spent surrounded by family, the simple act of growing old together, witnessing the passing years from the same porch swing. All of it gone, replaced by a gaping void. Friends and family offered their support, their comforting words, their invitations to dinner. He appreciated it truly, but the pain was deeply personal, a wound that only he could tend to in the quiet solitude of his own mind. He dedicated himself to work, finding a perverse solace in the routine, the spreadsheets, the endless patient records. Productivity became a shield, a way to fill the hours and keep his thoughts from straying to the empty side of the bed. He started taking long walks again through their neighborhood, something they had often done together in the evenings. Now they were solitary journeys, his footsteps the only sound on the sidewalk. He noticed the way the streetlights cast long shadows, the faint smell of wood smoke from a distant chimney. Details he might have shared with Lindsay now remained his own. Sometimes a simple memory would pierce through the numbness. The taste of July sweet corn, fresh from a roadside stand, would instantly transport him back to a summer evening. Lindsay laughing, butter dripping down her chin. Des Moines, the city they had made their home, was now a landscape of memories, each corner holding a ghost of what they had. He thought about the concept of new and how it had consumed Lindsay. Her restless desire for novelty, for excitement, for constant change. It wasn't just a preference. It was a fundamental part of her, a need that had ultimately led her down a destructive path. He wondered if she had ever truly been content, or if she was always searching for something more, something different, always believing the grass was greener. Eventually, on the advice of his sister, he started therapy. Sitting across from a quiet woman in a small, windowless office, he began to unpack the trauma of the betrayal, the layers of anger, hurt, and self-doubt. It was slow, arduous work, marked by setbacks and quiet moments of despair when the weight of it all felt too heavy to bear. One crisp autumn weekend, he drove back to Kansas City, not for a conference, but to visit the National World War I Museum. He had been there before with Lindsay. Walking among the artifacts, reading the stories of sacrifice and loss on a global scale, he found a strange, detached perspective. His personal tragedy, while devastating, was but a tiny ripple in the vast ocean of human suffering. It didn't diminish his pain, but it placed it within a larger context, a reminder of the enduring nature of struggle and the resilience of the human spirit. The process of healing was not a sprint, he realized, but a long, slow march. As the seasons turned and the raw edges of grief began to dull, Tyler slowly started to rebuild his life. It wasn't a sudden transformation, but a gradual, methodical process, much like his work. He began with the house. He decluttered, systematically removing every item that served as a stark reminder of Lindsay. Her favorite vase, the mismatched coffee mugs they had bought on vacation, the framed photo of them at Lake Okoboji. Each item was carefully packed away, donated, or simply discarded. The house felt lighter, less crowded, slowly becoming his own space again. He re-engaged with old hobbies he had set aside during the marriage. He dusted off his woodworking tools in the garage, the scent of sawdust a welcome, familiar comfort. He started playing racquetball again at the local YMCA, the exertion a release for pent-up energy. He made new connections through these activities, simple friendships built on shared interests, free from the complicated history of his past. He also found himself craving new experiences, a desire to escape the familiar landscapes that held so many painful memories. He traveled, first to the Pacific Northwest to hike mountains, then to the East Coast to explore historic cities. Each trip was a deliberate step away from Des Moines, a chance to breathe different air, to see new horizons. He considered moving away entirely, starting fresh in a new city, but after much reflection, he decided against it. Des Moines was home. It was where his family lived, where his work was, where he had built his career. He wouldn't let her actions drive him from his roots. He started volunteering at a local food bank, finding a quiet purpose in helping others. The simple act of sorting cans, packing boxes, and interacting with people who faced their own struggles offered a different kind of solace. It shifted his focus outward, away from his own internal battles, reminding him that the world was larger than his personal pain. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he learned to trust himself again. The self-doubt that had gnawed at him after the betrayal began to recede. He started to believe in his own worthiness, not as a husband, but as a man. He accepted that perfect marriages didn't exist, that all relationships had their flaws and challenges. But loyalty, he now understood, should be a given, a foundational pillar that, once broken, shattered everything. Then, months after the divorce was final, a plain white envelope arrived in his mailbox. No return address. The handwriting was unmistakably Lindsay's. He hesitated, then opened it. The letter was long, handwritten, and raw. She expressed her deep remorse, not just for the affair, but for the wreckage it had caused. She described her struggles, her difficulty finding work, the social isolation, the crushing weight of her financial situation. "I understand now, Tyler," she wrote. "I understand what I threw away and what I lost. It was a harsh lesson, and I paid a heavy price. I regret it every single day." She spoke of loneliness, of regret, of wanting to take it all back. Tyler read the letter twice, his face impassive. He acknowledged her pain, understood it on an intellectual level, but he couldn't reconcile it with his own. The scars she bore were of her own making. The scars he bore, however, were placed upon him. Her regret felt like a consequence of her changed circumstances, not a true understanding of the fundamental breach of trust. He felt no desire for revenge, no lingering anger, just a quiet, settled acceptance. He simply folded the letter and put it in a drawer, not to be read again. He realized then the true cost of building happiness on the misfortune of others. It wasn't just Lindsay's misfortune or Chad's. It was his own too. The pursuit of fleeting satisfaction, the disregard for commitments, had left a trail of broken lives, including her own. The realization was cold, stark, and utterly undeniable. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, Tyler Peterson was a changed man. The sharp edges of bitterness had softened, smoothed over by time and deliberate effort. He was more grounded now, less naive about the complexities of human nature, but the experience hadn't hardened him entirely. He remained open to life's possibilities, albeit with a healthier skepticism. His life in Des Moines had taken on a new rhythm. He continued to thrive professionally, his work as a medical administrator providing a steady anchor. He'd even taken on a mentorship role for newer employees, finding satisfaction in guiding others. He still volunteered at the food bank, a consistent presence, a small way to contribute to the community that had, in its own quiet way, also held him through his ordeal. He met someone new. Her name was Sarah. She was a librarian with kind eyes and a quiet laugh. She possessed a steady demeanor, a calm presence that Tyler found incredibly comforting. She wasn't driven by the frantic pursuit of novelty that had defined Lindsay. Sarah found joy in simple things: a well-written book, a walk in the park, a home-cooked meal. Tyler approached this new relationship with caution, each step measured, each emotion carefully considered. But beneath the caution, there was a genuine, budding hope. He took his time, allowing trust to build, brick by slow brick. He often found himself reflecting on the moral implications of everything that had happened, not just Lindsay's choices or Chad's, but his own reactions, his own role in allowing the situation to reach such a devastating point. He understood now, with a clarity that only pain could provide, that paying the price wasn't just about financial ruin or legal battles. It was about the profound loss of trust, the irreparable damage to a reputation, the complete obliteration of a shared future that had once seemed so certain. It was the quiet internal cost that lingered long after the court papers were signed. He felt a sense of quiet peace these days. Not happiness in the boisterous, carefree way he once might have known, but a deeper, more enduring contentment. He acknowledged the pain of the past. It was a part of his story, a scar, but it no longer defined him. It was a chapter, not the whole book. On a cool, late summer evening, Tyler found himself on his back porch again. The oak leaves rustled softly in the gentle Midwestern breeze. He sipped a glass of iced tea, the condensation cool against his fingers. The quiet was different now. It wasn't the suffocating silence of suspicion or the tense stillness before a confrontation. It was simply the quiet of an evening, a man living his life, no longer waiting for anything to unravel. He looked out at the familiar expanse of his backyard, the distant glow of city lights on the horizon. Some roads were hard, he mused, long and arduous, full of unexpected turns and crushing losses. But they could eventually still lead you home. He had navigated the betrayal, had survived the wreckage, and in doing so had found a quiet strength he hadn't known he possessed. He was ready now for whatever new, true thing came next.